Good evening. Good evening. We're set to begin. As you know, I'm Mike Widmer, Town Moderator, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. The special town meeting of the town of Belmont for November 18, 2024. And let's begin the meeting with the pledge, and then please remain standing after. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like, if you remain standing, please, I'd like to have us observe a moment of silence for two longtime Belmont activists who passed away earlier this month. Vera Dreyer, she was a trustee of the Belmont Library for 12 years and chair for part of that period, and active on the building committee at the time. Sherry Jones, Ralph Jones' wife, she was a town meeting member for another number of years, but active in many, many ways in the community. Two very important people in Belmont's past. If we could have a moment of remembrance. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, please be seated. So let me continue with my remarks. First of all, as you know, I admit to the floor the town administrator, department heads and staff, town clerk staff, town council, warrant committee, school committee superintendent and staff, planning board, Belmont Housing Authority, the energy committee. Have I left anybody out, any committees, any individuals? All right, seeing none, we'll continue. Let me take a few minutes here to lay out what's in front of us. 3 nights, it's going to test us, 3 consecutive nights, obviously. Tonight, we start, once through the preliminaries with Article 2. I'll go through that momentarily, but Article 2, we may or may not finish tonight. Wherever we leave off, we'll resume tomorrow with Article 2. Or 3 and 4, we'll continue with those. And I hope we'll complete 2, 3, and 4 by the end of business tomorrow. We then begin Wednesday with the citizens petition to go from 3 to 5 select board members, and then wind up other, mainly finance articles. I think there are 5 of them. So that's the game plan, but things may change, obviously, depending on how things unfold. Let me talk about Article 2 tonight. I've sent the memo and laying out the sequence, and Ellen sent it again yesterday, but let me review. We'll start, Taylor Yates, chair of the planning board, will read the motion under, first the main motion under Article 2. He will then, we'll have one little switch at that moment. I'll explain when we get to it. It's minor. We will then have Taylor make his presentation on the main motion on behalf of the planning board. When he's through that, we won't have any debate. I'll then turn to Roy Epstein, the select board, who will present his amendment for Article 2 and then the presentation supporting that. At that moment, we'll open it up to the floor for discussion, Map 1 versus Map 2. We won't discuss then whether we want to we want to approve the final motion or anything like that. It's just simply Map 1 versus Map 2. Not so simple, but in any case, straightforward. at that point. We then, when discussion is complete on that, or somebody moves the question, and we end debate, we then vote on map 2. That's the amendment. So you'll vote for map 2 or favorably or no for map 1. I'll explain at the time. If map 1 prevails, it remains the same main motion. If map 2 prevails, then it becomes the main motion. At that point, we turn to the amendments. The next amendment is Roy Epstein will have a smaller amendment on the Belmont Housing Authority. And then we turn to the 2 other amendments once Roy's second amendment is dispensed with. The Sarno-Koplow amendment and then the Heller-Wright amendment. Once those are, and we'll do those in succession, not at the same time. Once we've completed action on all of that, we will have a main motion, map 1 or 2, as amended or not. But we'll all know what it is. And that's the moment for the final debate, if we want to have it, as to whether we go forward and approve this motion as amended, and then obviously proceed to send it to the state, so to speak. So that's the sequence, and at each stage I will remind you where we are, so that because it's easy to get lost. A couple of other preliminaries and then a final comment. On the scope, obviously behind changes in 3A and zoning are developments. But we're not debating developments tonight. That's not what we're debating, zoning changes. And the key question to ask, obviously, is what will be allowed in this zoning change and what will not be allowed? And what powers does the town have if you make the change, and what powers is it giving up, for example? That's the broad context, so keep that in mind in terms of sticking to the scope. And obviously, if somebody strays beyond scope, I'll try to nicely remind them. Oh, now in the dark, okay. A couple of other things. Be as brief as you can. Obviously, this is everybody, not everybody, but almost everybody probably has a strong views and concerns about what we're talking about tonight. But if people have said what you want to say, and it's happened 2, 3, 4 times, if you could just be brief, I'm not saying you shouldn't get up, but just agree with that point of view and not necessarily take the full 3 minutes, because to say the obvious, we have a lot to cover. In terms of speaking, we've made a slight change, so we've moved the microphones here so that instead of speaking more or less toward the stage, the individuals, you will be speaking back toward the audience. So stand in line as you do, but you'll see a blue stripe. Stand behind the blue stripe, and then I'll call on you and come to the microphone. So if there's any question about that, just let me know. Finally, let me reflect on where we are. As you know, I've been doing this a long time, and I've seen a lot of issues, big issues, controversial issues come and go. And this is right up there near the top in terms of its complexity, in terms of the emotions, and in terms of decisions we're making for the future of our town. So this is complicated and, as I say, emotional, but I want to recognize the moment where we are. Speaking first for myself, and the amount of time that this has taken to be here. I began the process of planning for this town meeting probably 2 months ago. And I kind of glanced sort of through my phone and other things. I have probably, in that period, had 400 meetings, telephone calls, memos, or texts, or emails. And I'm not saying that to get credit. I'm saying that it reflects the complexity of what we're dealing with. And to put that is nothing. Ooh. Oh boy. Welcome. But that is nothing. That is, I may not make it tonight. That is nothing compared to the work of a whole series of groups over the last year or longer. And those groups include the MBTA Community Advisory Committee, the town administrator and staff, town clerk and staff, the select board, town council, planning board, the town planning director, and obviously town meeting members and residents themselves. So this is, you know, for us to be able to come together and in a civil and fair and respectful way to debate the future of Belmont in this is a very special thing. So I want to urge all of us to build off of that, but I first want to thank all of the people who've worked on this, the extraordinary effort to get us to this day. So thank you. And with that, I turn it over to Ellen.
It's not plugged in. Okay. May I? Yes, of course. I'm a little short of the mic. Good evening, everyone. Pursuant to the warrant for the special town meeting to be held November 18, 2024, I, Ellen O'Brien Cushman, Town Clerk, do hereby certify that I gave notice of said meeting by posting an attested copy of the warrant on the Town Clerk's official bulletin board in the Town Hall and at least 5 other places in town 14 days before the date of this meeting, in accordance with Chapter 39, Section 10 of the General Laws and Section 30-110A of the General Bylaws of the Town of Belmont. Furthermore, I do hereby certify that I gave notice of this special town meeting of November 18, 2024, by causing a copy of the warrant to be sent to the town meeting members at least 14 days before the date of this meeting, and by causing copies of the warrant to be made available through the public library and the Belmont Town Clerk's office, all in accordance with Section 30-110B of the General Bylaws of the Town of Belmont and our representative Town Meeting Acts of 1926 as amended. Mr. Moderator, may I? Thank you. Just for a moment, because we do have a few new town meeting members who have been elected at caucus, who have not necessarily had the pleasure of using their electronic voting devices. So in a moment, the moderator will call for us to test those devices, and I'm just going to remind you, this little clicker that's supposed to be around your neck, your clicker is a two-way communicator, so when you push the button, you're going to press 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for abstain. And you will see an LED screen on your device that tells you what vote you have cast, and a green light will appear. The green light tells you that that vote has been recorded. It's coming back to you to confirm that your vote has been received. So once you see that green light, please then look up at the screen. This is not like a remote control of the TV. It's better to look at your device first and then find your name on the screen. And once you have found your name on the screen, it will remain in the same place every time we vote tonight and through Wednesday. If anybody has any problems, for example, when we get to the testing or any time, and your vote is not coming up with a green light, please raise your hand and come on down, and Deanne Kane in the Town Clerk's office will help you get to your device getting voting. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. All right, we are testing the devices, as Ellen just said. So if you have a problem, as she said, let us know. Okay. You want to scroll? Everybody okay? We'll scroll, but is there an issue? Jeff, why don't you just come on down? Thanks. The 3 or 4 people are getting new devices, and then we'll just do a quick test to make sure they work. We have tested all these devices just before the meeting began, so just a handful. vote again. So they're updating in the system these devices, and then we'll do a quick vote again. Okay, let's quickly vote again, make sure we're okay. 1, 2, or 3, please. Press and hold, of course. Okay, James. We're scrolling here to see. While they settle this, we're going to proceed with the motion. So, as I said, this is the order 1 through 10 that we're going to consider the articles, but depending on where we are, we'll begin Wednesday morning with 10 and then finish whatever. Wednesday evening. I've already lost it. No. The next motion, please. Move that the report of the Select Board and other town officers, any committee heretofore appointed be accepted. I'll take unanimous consent on that motion. Great, thank you. Adopted unanimously. Move that Article 1 be laid on the table. Again, unanimous consent. Thank you very much. And now we move to Article 2. And Mr. Yates will read the motion.
Taylor Yates, Chair of the Planning Board, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 2. Move that the town amend the zoning bylaw by adding a new Section 9 as printed in the document entitled 2024 Belmont Special Town Meeting Warrant Appendix 1, revised November 17th, 2024. And to further amend the Belmont zoning map to include the MOZ district as shown on the plan entitled Belmont Multifamily Overlay District and Subdistricts, November 18, 2024, Special Town Meeting, Map 1.
Right. That's it. Thank you. Now, I'm going to have Mr. Ryan. I mentioned there was one little thing that Chris Ryan, the town planner, is going to go over for you quickly. The changes that you received yesterday in the Article 2 motion. These were all minor changes, errors, nothing substantive. Mr. Ryan?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Moderator. Chris Ryan, Director of Planning and Building. I'm just going to go over these very briefly. I don't know if we can have the pages up that they are related to, but if anybody wants to see those specific pages, you can certainly refer to it in your packet. These are the following changes that we made the other day. From page 15, delete paragraphs 7A and 7B, which are redundant and they potentially conflict with the dimensional table. On page 22, section 9.6E1B removes subsection 3 and 4 regarding bike parking per dwelling unit in retail and service office use. Obviously, you can't calculate bike parking based on dwelling units for office space. 3 incorrect references to the height of non-occupiable pitched roofs in subdistrict MOZ 1. On page 8, there is a footnote that states that a 42-foot tall building in MOZ 1 must have an 8-foot pitched roof, and that would actually make it a 44-foot building, and the planning board was very insistent upon 42 feet being the maximum height. So we changed that from 8 feet to 6. Page 9, the pitched roof line of the dimensional table sets a 7-foot maximum for a pitched roof. We've changed that back to 6. And on page 14, 96B5A, sets an 8-foot maximum for a pitched roof. Again, that has to be 6. Next, on page 8, we eliminate footnote number 1 after the table in 9.5A, and we delete that and renumber the section. Page 15, figure 3, dormers. The equal to or less than is not appropriate. It has to be equal to or greater than. So we changed that in the figure. On page 8, the first column, 9.5B, has an extraneous footnote reference, and we removed that. Table 5, 9.5, Table B, page 10, use and occupancy line, Belmont Village. There's a 1 after that, so we just deleted that. That's not necessary. Page 10, use and occupancy line, Waverly Oak 2S. That 2 is extraneous. We deleted that. And that is the sum total of those minor changes that we made.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Mr. Yates, you can come back and, if you would, and make the presentation on the main motion.
Taylor Yates, Chair of the Planning Board, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 2. On to the main event for tonight. Now, this is a big and complicated piece of legislation, but I'm confident that by the end of this presentation, you will have the information that you need to make a decision that is good for Belmont. Next slide, please. So I'm going to start with just a background on what exactly the MBTA Community Act is and what it does. Next slide, please. So the MBTA Communities Act is a state law that is designed to address the state's housing crisis. We have a critical housing shortage that makes this region probably the third most expensive housing market after New York and San Francisco. So it covers 177 towns and cities in Massachusetts, and it specifically requires them to do the following. Zone for at least one zoning district of reasonable size in which multifamily housing is permitted as of right, with no age restrictions and is suitable for families with children. And practically speaking, what that means is we have to zone for a certain amount of housing. We do not need to build it, and we certainly do not need to build it right away. A district of reasonable size, which translates to a certain number of acreage that this zoning must cover, and it must allow multifamily housing, which the state counts as 3 or more units. And it must be permitted as of right. We cannot implement the MBTA Communities Act through special permits. There may be no age restrictions, and suitable for families with children essentially requires us to hit a minimum home size. Next slide, please. A couple of additional things to know about this law. It requires a simple majority at town meeting to pass. Most zoning requires a 2/3 majority. Tonight, we just have to hit 50% plus 1. And we must provide the state with a compliant plan by the end of the year. Next slide, please. So this is Belmont's homework assignment. The state has required us to zone for at least 1,632 homes. It must cover at least 27 acres, and we can spread it out around town, but our largest area that this covers must account for at least 50% of the total acres in our plan. Next slide, please. So I'm going to give you a quick overview of the plan, and then I'm going to explain a few more concepts that you need to do a deeper dive into it. Next slide, please. So the planning board has produced a map that has been determined by the state to be compliant and is referred to as map 1. It shows where this map is going to show where all of the MBTA Communities Act zoning is going to be and what the form factor of the zoning we have created will allow. Next slide, please. Here you can see there are 4 color-coded areas: Waverly, Belmont Center, Belmont Village, and Lower Belmont or Belmont Corner. Next slide. So again, I cannot emphasize enough, this has been reviewed by both our consultant and with the state and determined to be compliant. If we pass one of the maps tonight, we will be compliant with the MBTA Communities Act. Next slide. So you don't need to understand everything about zoning to understand this law, but you do need to understand 3 key planning principles. Next slide. 1 is overlay district, 2 is by right, and 3 is design and site plan review. Next slide. So an overlay district is what it sounds like. It is a zoning district that is overlaid on top of another zoning area, which is called the underlying zoning. It is a very flexible way to create zoning, and it's the vehicle through which we have chosen to implement the MBTA Communities Act. Any parcel in an overlay district can choose which of the 2 zoning districts it falls within to develop what the property owner would want to develop. If they want to use the overlay district, they can. If they want to use the underlying district, they can. However, it is not a la carte. You cannot pick, for example, the height maximums of the overlay district and the setback minimums of the underlying district. It must be one or the other. Next slide. By right. So building permitting is done largely in one of two ways, by right and special permit. By right basically says you have to go through a checklist that confirms you conform with the zoning bylaw and all other regulations that apply to construction. Special permit is a discretionary process, which means that it can take longer, it can be more unpredictable, and a property owner could be denied the right to build what they want to build without being given a reason. This matters because the state is requiring that the MBTA Communities Act be by right zoning. Next slide. So design and site plan review is the technical term for that checklist that I mentioned. It is the process that the building department and the planning board go through to confirm that you have met all of the requirements of the zoning bylaw. Next slide. One important caveat is that design and site plan review does allow for a process called peer review. So if there's something that the planning board feels that it needs to understand better about the development, such as traffic impact, we can request a peer review that is paid for by the developer. Next slide. All right, so let's get into the meat of the plan. Next slide. So again, we have a compliant plan before you tonight. If we vote on this map, we will be in compliance with the MBTA Communities Act. Next slide. As you saw before, it has 4 areas: Waverly, Belmont Center, Belmont Village, and Belmont Corner. It also has 8 sub-districts. Sub-districts basically means housing form factor. And the fact that we have 8 shows just how much attention to detail we put into ensuring that the housing that we allow under the MBTA Communities Act conforms with the neighborhoods in which it is being placed. Next slide. So to dive a little bit deeper into this map, I'll talk about each district. So Waverly is our largest district. It consists of a little bit over 50% of our total land area, and again, that is a state requirement. Your largest district must be at least 50% of the total land area in your plan. Waverly was chosen to be the largest district because it abuts 2 Belmont Housing Authority properties. It is within a half-mile of a train station, which is a requirement of the largest district. And we have done studies that have shown that Waverly's vibrancy would be improved by more housing. The second largest district is Belmont Center, largely because it meets a lot of the same criteria as Waverly. It is near a train station, and adding housing density to that area will improve foot traffic to our retail streetscape. The third largest district is Belmont Village. And one of the things that we did that I think was a great use of this law was we are using it to give the Belmont Housing Authority the zoning that they need to redevelop their properties into what they want. So we worked with them, we collaborated with them to understand what exactly it was they wanted to build, and we wrote it into the MBTA Communities Act so that we can increase the quality and quantity of affordable housing in Belmont. Finally, we chose Lower Belmont for 3 reasons. One is on a heavily used bus line. There are a number of commercial properties along Belmont Street that could stand to be redeveloped. And there was a desire from the community to spread the MBTA Communities Act around town. Next slide. So some key metrics for map 1. We have zoned for 1,671 units against a requirement of 1,632. We have zoned it across 58.5 acres against a requirement of 27. We have zoned for a density of 27.5 units per acre against a requirement of 15. Waverly represents 52.6% of the total land area, which meets that minimum 50% threshold, but it's important to note here, we did hear from a number of Waverly residents that they did not want the entire plan to be placed in Waverly. So we got as close to 50% as we could without going under. And then finally, MM units MMU units, or mandatory mixed-use units, represent 21.5% of the total against a 25% maximum. And I'll explain a little bit more about that requirement in a moment. But the upshot of all this is that we have a compliant map. Next slide. So let's talk about the sub-districts, these housing form factors that I mentioned. Next slide. So sub-district 1A is a triple-decker, a very familiar form factor in this region, and we used it primarily in our lower density districts. Next slide, please. Sub-district 1B is also a triple-decker, but this is a special case zone. It's really for lots that are large enough to accommodate more than one triple-decker. Next slide. Subdistrict 2 is a townhouse. Again, this is for lower density neighborhoods, and in particular, neighborhoods that have a lot of single-family homes, because we felt that it fit in a little bit better with the character of those neighborhoods. Subdistrict 3A is a Belmont Housing Authority mid-rise. This is primarily for Sherman Gardens. This is one of our larger housing form factors. Next slide. Subdistrict 3B is a combination of the Belmont Housing Authority mid-rise and townhouses. And this, probably the best example of this is, of the applicability of this is Belmont Village, where you could build a combination of mid-rise buildings and townhouses. Subdistrict 4, mandatory mixed use. So we'll pause on this one for a minute because this is one of the more complicated subdistricts. So the mandatory part of mandatory mixed use is the ground level commercial. It is mandatory that the first floor of these buildings is commercial, which makes it a really good use for our retail districts, because then we can retain the retail that we already have. A couple of additional requirements come with this one, though. Number one, you cannot, at a maximum, the plan can include 25% of your total units as mandatory mixed use units. And the second is the acreage of mandatory mixed use does not count towards your total acreage. Next slide, please. So we have a subdistrict 5A and a subdistrict 5B. They are our largest form factor buildings. They are mid-rises, and they come in two flavors. One has a commercial density bonus, and one does not. I'll talk about the commercial density bonus in just a minute, but what you see on the screen right here is what these mid-rises will look like without the commercial density bonus. Next slide, please. So Subdistrict 5B does have a commercial density bonus. So in Subdistrict 4, the ground level retail is required. In Subdistrict 5B, it is incentivized. If you want to build something that looks like what was on the previous slide, you're allowed to do that. But if you would like to build a larger building, you can. The first floor just has to be commercial. Next slide, please. So this is the total number of units across each of the sub-districts, and the key takeaways here are: number one, we make heavy use of the Belmont Housing Authority and the mandatory mixed use districts in our plan. And then we round it out with the lower density form factors in SD1 and SD2. Next slide. Thank you. So let's talk about the 3A areas in Belmont, the places where we're actually putting this. Next slide, please. So we'll use Waverly as an example. If you want to see any of the other ones, we have a similar zoom in, and you can just ask. But Waverly, I think, is a great example of how thoughtful we were about placing these different housing form factors in different parts of a neighborhood. So you'll see the core in the center of the Waverly district is this orange mandatory mixed use. Right? That's where the retail is. We want to keep that retail, so we have zoned that as mandatory mixed use. The larger housing form factors are on the edge of the district, and along Moraine Street, where there's not any retail right now, we don't really see a need to add it, we use the no commercial density bonus subdistrict 5A. But over behind Tate, we have added the commercial density bonus subdistrict 5B. We've in yellow are the two Belmont Housing Authority properties in Waverly that begat kind of the Waverly as our largest district thesis. And then it's connected together by triple deckers in blue and townhomes in green. And you'll see going down Lexington Street, we mostly use townhouses because that's where you start to get into single family home neighborhoods, and it's a better fit for that kind of neighborhood. Next slide. So let's wrap this up. Next slide, please. So this is the culmination of a very long, very public process. It was a collaborative process that involved a lot of listening to the community, a lot of compromise among different needs, and I'm very comfortable and very pleased with the result that we've produced for you tonight. If Article 2 passes, we'll continue on the path to compliance. And if Article 2 passes, I cannot emphasize enough how important it will be to pass Articles 3 and 4 to ensure that this is effectively implemented the way we want it to be implemented. Next slide. So I think this is going to be good for Belmont. It's going to bring housing, which the region desperately needs, and that housing is going to bring new residents, new foot traffic. It's going to be located in areas that improve walkability of town, and it provides those opportunities to enhance the vibrancy of some key districts in town. Next slide. So what happens if we pass the MBTA Communities Act tonight? All of those good things that I just said would happen. What happens if we reject it? A lot of bad things will happen. First and foremost, we will lose access to a lot of grant money, and indications are from the state that that grant money pool will grow over time. We'll probably get sued by the Attorney General, and we may get subject to a civil lawsuit under the Fair Housing Act, and we'll incur the attendant litigation costs of both of those. And then finally, the state may say, if you're not going to create a 3A plan for yourself, an MBTA Communities Act plan for yourself, we're going to create one for you, and we may or may not have any interest in creating one that you want. Next slide. And that's it. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Yates. Ms. Dion, you have a brief statement.
Good evening, everyone. Elizabeth Dion, Select Board Chair, Town Meeting Member at Large. Pursuant to State Ethics Commission Advisory 0502, there is a presumed conflict of interest if a Select Board member owns a property that is within 300 feet of a proposed zoning map. My husband and I own a property on Agassiz Avenue in Waverly Square. It is not in the map, but it is within 300 feet of the map. There is a process for rebutting the presumption, but it is cumbersome. And I've chosen instead to recuse myself as a Select Board member from both discussion and voting on this matter. I can, however, speak and vote as a fellow town meeting member. So I will be joining you, in which capacity. I look forward to the debate tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dion. Mr. Epstein, do you want to introduce your First Amendment?
So good evening, everybody. I'm Roy Epstein, member of the Select Board, and I'm going to introduce an amendment that makes what we're calling Map 2, which I gather, or I hope most of you already have heard of. And let me just move on to read the motion, and then I'll explain it. Article 2 moved that the words Map 1 be changed to Map 2, so that the motion reads, that the town amend the Belmont zoning bylaw as printed in Appendix 1 of the November 18th, 2024 special town meeting warrant, and to further amend the Belmont zoning map to include the MOZ district as shown on the plan entitled Belmont Multifamily Overlay District and Subdistricts November 18th, 2024 special town meeting, map 2, and the map is attached.
Select board vote.
Hello? Oh. Given Elizabeth's explanation, the select board voted 2-0 in favor of the amendment.
And the planning board? Mr. Yates?
Taylor Yates, Chair of the Planning Board, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 2. The Planning Board voted 3-2 against favorable action on map 2.
Thank you. I can hear. Yeah, Mr. Hall, go ahead, please. While you're doing that, how did the warrant committee vote?
Paul Richter, Warrant Committee Chair. The Warrant Committee voted unfavorable action by a vote of 12-2 with 2 abstentions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hall?
George Hall, Town Council. I believe the revised main motion that was sent out yesterday refers to Appendix 1 as revised through November 17th, 2024. So just pointing out that that revision date should remain in the main motion.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hall. Mr. Epstein, go ahead with your presentation.
Okay, thank you. So I have a couple of slides to show you. Can we move on to the slides? Okay. I hope you've been part of some of the discussions we've had on this question. The idea with map 2, we say use pure code site, which is accurate, but more completely, map 2 creates a separate sub-district that includes the pure code site on Brighton Street, and it also includes 40 Brighton Street, which is Frank French's property on the other side of the tracks. Next slide. So Taylor showed you map 1, that's on the right side. Map 2 is on the left side. The arrow points to the area that we're talking about on Brighton Street, or it's actually Brighton and a little bit of Hiddinger Street. And on map 2, the lower Belmont corner zone is gone because given the way these districts have to be defined, we have a choice of one or the other. We can't do both. Next slide. So just in brief, what's going on with Brighton Street, it's a zoning option that includes pure code and the French Mahoney property. It allows residential and also commercial development in the form of mixed use. That's just not possible now. The existing zoning is in the general business zoning. You can't do residential there, period. And as Taylor explained, the 3A proposal is overlay. So the commercial zoning remains there. The existing businesses can stay there, do whatever they want. If the general business zoning is changed in the future, and 3A is there, it's still an overlay situation, and the owner can decide, do they want to use 3A, or do they want to use general business as it may exist in the future? Next slide. So this is a picture I borrowed from Google Maps on the left side. That's pure code on the French property. A revised zoning map has been prepared, and it shows in outline where the 3A parcels would be, and so pure code is the vertical striping and French Mahoney is the crosshatch. That's what we're talking about. Next slide. So pure code, I'm sure everybody knows who's been living in Belmont for more than a day. It's an industrial site. It's about 3 acres. It's actually pretty good size. It's one of the largest, what I would call underutilized parcels in Belmont. Currently, it's 3 acres, but it only pays about $100,000 a year in property tax. a question that's been studied a lot. There is no market for new industrial use. That's been explored for a long, long time. It's just, there's no market for it as an industrial or a manufacturing facility. There have been a couple of development ideas. I'm not going to review what they all were. Suffice it to say that none of them worked out. And there is some environmental contamination that would have to be addressed in any development there. Next slide. So I have, I think MAP 2 originated with me, and I was also a member of the MBTA Communities Advisory Committee, and the committee thought that it was a good idea to include MAP 2, or include the Pure Code area. It allows up to 4.5 stories of apartments above retail, so that if there was a retail ground floor, the total structure would be 5.5 stories. Mixed use means that the ground floor is some mixture of shops or restaurants, some other commercial use, not apartments. So if it really became 5.5 stories, you can't sneak apartments onto the ground floor. The ground floor is reserved for that commercial use. If you want to do residential only, then it's 4.5. As of right, like the rest of 3A, it's not subject to a special permit process. It streamlines the process for the developer. You know, after reviewing this for a while, it's not clear that any developer really wants to get involved with a special permit project for a large project. I can tell you that many developers in the Northeast are aware of the ordeal at McLean, and they just don't want to do that again. Having a development by right is really essential to attract developer interest. As Taylor alluded, there's language and provisions in the zoning to nonetheless protect the interests of the town. It's in the zoning language itself, with the dimensional requirements and so forth, and also the site plan review process is an additional layer of protection, and that's actually the way most towns are going about zoning these days. If that area were developed, it would generate substantially more property tax. I know this is a controversial question, but I have looked at this a lot, and I am quite certain that at the end of the day, it would be cash flow positive for the town. I don't think we'll make a ton of money. It's not a bonanza, but it's not a loser. I think it's a way to do something that would be modestly cash flow positive and be a huge aesthetic improvement. The environmental issues, whatever they are, that's entirely on the owner. The town doesn't get involved with that at all. It's a state process to remediate these types of sites. If the town would have any expense at all, it would be some modest outlay to hire a consultant, exactly as we did at Cushing Square. It would just be to audit the results of an environmental review that is being done anyway by the developer and the state in conjunction. But the expense to Belmont is insignificant. It's really all on the developers. Next slide. So what do you get if this happened? You'd get a lot more housing than MAP 1. I think I've said in public meetings that the lower Belmont corner map was actually designed to result in very little housing. So that's kind of the key difference. Pure Coat would be a reasonable sized building. It would be probably 1 and 2 bedroom apartments, because that's where the market is. If you look at where these developments are that are going up all over, they're generally 1s and 2s. It generates more affordable units than MAP 1. And MAP 1 might not produce a single affordable unit, or very, very few. It gets more progress towards our safe harbor for 40B. I have to believe that between the developer's self-interest and the other controls in the zoning, that a development there would be attractive. It would certainly be modern. It would be right on the community path. I think it would be an upgrade. In my view, it's an upgrade for the neighborhood. And it provides a development path for Pure Coat, which otherwise has been moribund for a long time. Next slide. As I've discussed, we have controls in the zoning to get a good idea of what the outcome could be if a developer proceeded. The zoning has footprint restrictions. That's the size of the footprint of the building. Those are very important. That's called form-based zoning. I can remind you that when the Cushing Square development was first proposed, and there were no footprint restrictions in the zoning, the developer wanted to build something that I always called the Pentagon. It was a monolithic facade going from Chapella Road all the way to Belmont Street. It would have been an enormous block of a building. And the planning board wrestled with the developer for years to come up with a different plan of these separated, articulated buildings. I just think that's more suitable. That is the idea for Pure Code as well. You can't, with the current proposed language, you cannot build one gigantic building. It would have to be something smaller. And as Taylor emphasized, and we have to keep saying, that whatever you do in your zoning, you cannot limit the number of units. So nobody can say how many units will be built because the zoning alignment, it's illegal for zoning to specify or limit number of units. You can't specify number of bedrooms per unit or number of children. All of that's just illegal, so we don't even talk about it. Next slide. The town engaged a consultant to look at what could be done with that site, and the current owner also engaged his own team, and everybody came to the same conclusion, that the biotech lab, office, medical building, hotel, manufacturing, none of that is economically viable. You can talk about it, but nobody's going to build it. Mixed use is the highest and best use, and that's possible. It's a path that's made possible with the proposal in MAP 2. Next slide. Is there a 40B option? I think that there is there's always a 40B option. The question is, would anybody exercise the option? I think that is a very real possibility. If there's a 40B development, then the town doesn't have any control at all. The developer is not bound by anything in our local zoning in any which way. And I think that would be an unfortunate outcome, but to my mind, we're kind of daring the owner to go that way if we don't give him an alternative development path. I don't want to digress into side issues, but let me just say for those who have asked about the Avalon payment in Lexington, I just don't think that's relevant. I don't think it's even achievable, and if somebody wants to ask further about that in the question period, I'm happy to talk about it. Next slide. I think I've covered these points. Sorry. French Mahoney, same deal. It's overlay, but it's for the townhouse configuration, the different form factor. So French Mahoney would not be a big mixed-use thing if that were ever developed using 3A. The possibility there is townhouses, or they can just stay and keep doing what they're doing. Next slide. So, sum it up, more property tax revenue, more housing, more affordable housing, some retail. I think it would be a suitable development. The environmental issue gets cleaned up, and I think I'm largely restating the view of the MBTA Communities Committee when we wrapped up in the spring. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Epstein. We now turn to discussion of Ms. Barbarian.
Sorry, Carol Barbarian, Vice Chair of the Planning Board, Town Meeting Member Precinct 7. One just technical correction on that. The residential option is actually 4 stories, not 4.5, with a maximum height of 46 feet.
Thank you. Mr. Brownsburg.
Oh, can I just say, sorry, I misspoke. And I also neglected to mention that map 2 is also a compliant map. So.
Great. Mr. Brownsburg, go ahead, and then I should remind folks, if you have any financial interest, obviously it needs to be disclosed under our bylaws. Senator Brownsburg.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Will Brownsburger, State Senator, Town Meeting Member at Large. Earlier this year, I shared with you my evolution on the housing issue. coming from a place of thinking of myself as a fiduciary only for the town of Belmont and thinking about quality of life and the town's fisc, to seeing a larger picture in which I recognize the enormous compelling need for dramatically increased housing production statewide, in which we all ultimately have a huge interest. I mentioned at that time that we were in the process of legislating a major housing package, which we did do on past that on July 31st. And I just wanted to share with you what I think the impact of that package is. And because I've spent most of the last few months trying to figure out how much of a dent we actually made in the production of housing. It's a sprawling package. There's $5 billion of bond authorizations. Behind that, another billion and change worth of tax credits. There's a lot of money there, and it's really about as much money as the state could possibly lift onto the table over the next 5 years to the end of producing housing. It will help rehabilitate our public housing stock, and that's a good thing. It's an inflation-adjusted increase in the amount of spending for public housing. It will barely keep pace with the inflation in building costs as far as the development of affordable housing. The state supports the development of affordable housing. We support the development of about 2,000 units a year. That's not going to go up as a result of this huge lift we've made politically to get more money on the table for affordable housing. And that 2,000 a year is really about 10% of the total production of housing that we need, and we really need even more than that. So in other words, we'd like to have about 20,000 a year, or at a minimum, of production, and we're way below that. So the bottom line is we will not spend our way out of the housing shortage at the state level. The only way we're going to develop the housing all of us have a huge interest in having is if town meetings across the state choose to produce housing. We need the support of everybody across the state to build affordable housing. It's not going to happen strike the word affordable there, because most of the housing we're going to build is market rate housing. 90% of what we're going to build, 90% of what we need to build is market rate housing, and that's all in your hands.
Mr. Brownsberger,
yes.
add 3 minutes if you can.
I'm wrapping it up. That's the bottom line. I think we need to choose the plan that builds the most housing. I think Plan 2 is that plan, and that's where I'm going to be tonight. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Ms. Dion, you're next.
Elizabeth Dion, town meeting member at large. As I previously disclosed, I own a property on Agassiz Avenue, which is not impacted by the difference between the two maps. I rise tonight to oppose Map 2 and support Map 1. Maps 1 and 2 have a major difference. Map 2 takes 5.6 acres of commercial real estate and rezones it for primarily residential use. This includes both Pure Coat and French construction. The Pure Coat owner has repeatedly stated that he plans to pursue intensive residential redevelopment. This past April, Belmont voters approved the largest override in our town's history, $8.4 million. They did this in significant part because we promised to increase the town's commercial tax base. Successful overrides are predicated on trust and hope. Voters need to trust that we are telling them the truth and that we will fulfill our campaign promises. They need to have hope that we have plans for a sustainable financial future. Adopting Map 2 will damage our credibility with voters. We will lose their trust that we tell the truth and keep our promises. Voters will lose hope that we are serious about growing our commercial tax base. As a result, it will be difficult, if not impossible, to pass another successful override anytime soon. We currently project asking voters for another override in November 2026, 2 years from now, or April 2027. If town meeting adopts Map 2, I believe the next override request will fail. Last night I wrote to you that I had not seen fiscal impact sensitivity analyses. That changed at 8:17 this morning when I received an updated report from RKG Associates. The report concludes that the town can profit from a best-case MBTA community scenario, which includes construction of 1,372 multifamily units, plus 193,000 square feet of retail, 212,000 square feet of office, and 2 hotels totaling 2 rooms. Under a worst-case scenario, the town significantly increases its budget deficit. We would still construct 1,372 multifamily units, but only 32,000 square feet of retail and no new office or hotels. There are not many places where Belmont can cite office or hotel space. To my knowledge, no consultant has indicated that Hittinger and Brighton, no town consultant, are inappropriate sites for office space, hotels, or even medical services. Residential units should be a component of the Pure Coat development. In fact, the Planning Board has already voted to support adding residential uses to our general business districts. However, the Pure Coat development needs to have a more balanced mix of residential and commercial space. We could have a zoning article ready for our next annual town meeting that would allow for residential uses at Pure Coat while protecting the town's commercial property tax interests. In the past year, town meeting has repeatedly, overwhelmingly voted in support of common sense zoning reform. If the Planning Board brings town meeting a win-win residential commercial zoning article in May, I believe we will enthusiastically support it. Please join me tonight in supporting MAP 1 and opposing MAP 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dion. Ms. Fines.
Good evening. I am Judy Fines, a town meeting member from Precinct 5 and co-chair of the Belmont Housing Trust. I speak to you tonight on behalf of the trust in support of the adoption of this zoning, including Amendment 1, MAP 2 for our town. The Housing Trust is Belmont's voice in support of meeting residents' housing needs by diversifying our housing stock and increasing the number and share of affordable units. Articles 2, 3, and 4 on tonight's warrant all represent important forward movement to enable a more diverse and affordable range of housing here. The Trust's membership enthusiastically supports passage of these articles, and at its most recent meeting, the members The members present voted unanimously in favor of MAP 2. MAP 2 builds on Article 2's strengths as proposed, which are several. First, by right zoning for multifamily development enables the creation of more housing and more affordable units in town. Second, by right multifamily zoning supports housing creation for a full range of housing types and sizes, especially the seniors that want to downsize and for families with children. Zoning of this kind for families with children was a 2022 Diversity Task Force recommendation. And third, Article 2 provides for deeper affordability with the redevelopment of the BHA properties, as well as affordability at different levels in other parts of the town. While the Housing Trust is in full support for all of its strengths, Article 2 as written does not take full advantage of 3A's potential, and hence Amendment 1 and some of the other amendments. After extensive public input, the MBTA Advisory Committee turned over to the Planning Board recommendations that zoned for more units and drew heavily on 2 housing production plans to include more high potential sites. Pure Coat was one of those high potential sites. The Planning Board chose instead to add Lower Belmont, an area already built up with 2- and 3-family homes, and also with fragmented property ownership, thus an area much less likely to yield actual new housing. MAP 2, by including the Brighton Street subdistrict, expands housing options more rapidly. In particular, voting to adopt MAP 2 can help us reach our 10% affordable housing goal in Belmont more quickly. Here's how. We currently are at 6.2%, and with the station at Waverly and McLean, we will reach 7.2% next year. And that will give us safe harbor, the ability to control development in town for 2 years. In 2027, adding 55 affordable units at Sherman Gardens through the BHA redevelopment will take us up to 7.8% and another year of safe harbor. Then, in 2028, a combination of the Pure Coat or the Brighton Street District affordable units, estimated at probably 35 units, plus other small developments under 3A or elsewhere in town, will get us over 9% to safe harbor through 2029. I'm just done. In 2029, a new housing production plan will guide the town to get to 10%. In conclusion, town meeting tonight could take a significant step to meet the housing needs of our neighbors and to ensure a more diverse range of housing here. More on Article 3 later. Now, the Housing Trust urges you to vote yes on Amendment 1 for MAP 2 and to vote yes for Articles 2, 3, and 4. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh, yes, ma'am.
Kristen Nelson Patel, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 1. I do have a financial interest in the choice between maps. My home is probably within 300 feet of the Pure Coat site. I'm rising tonight in support of MAP 2, and I urge you to also. I can tell you that my family has owned our house across the street from the Pure Coat site for 20 years. That site has been never close to a possibility of being developed into something better for that neighborhood. This is the best opportunity I have seen in that entire 2 decades to turn that property into something that the neighborhood would really love to see. So I am self-interested in it, but I also believe that that site is a more attractive site to develop for both business and the homes that would be above the businesses on that site. It is, unlike the Lower Belmont site, right on the community path, a 15-minute walk from Alewife, a 15-minute walk from Belmont Center, within walking distance of 3 of 4 elementary schools, and also within a 2-block walking distance of this site right here. So I urge you all, please think about it carefully, have an open mind, please support MAP 2.
Thank you. Ms. Heller.
Hi, Rachel Heller, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 3. I rise in support of this amendment. Including Brighton Street and Hittinger Street is a win-win-win for Belmont. It's a win for environmental cleanup, it's a win for revenue, and it's a win for more affordable homes. It's also more homes, more quickly, with more affordability. The Pure Coat site, as Judy Fines mentioned, was included in the 2018 Housing Production Plan as an underutilized site that was suited for development. Now, Town Meeting has done a really great job of supporting the recommendations of the housing production plans of the one in 2018 and the one in 2023. This includes supporting public housing redevelopment, development of underutilized sites. McLean was the first underutilized site that you all supported. Thank you for that. Hopefully we have a groundbreaking soon. And now Pure Coat will be an opportunity to advance it even further. In addition, more CPA money for affordable housing and using 3A, this law, to advance affordable housing production. Now, housing is the best investment that Belmont can make in a bright future. We need housing for our municipal budget. More homes means more revenue and more people to share our increasing costs of operating the town that we love. We need more housing for thriving businesses and a strong commercial revenue. In my day job, where I work leading Citizens Housing and Planning Association, I am working with businesses all over the state who are saying housing is their #1 need. We need it for employees, we need it for foot traffic, and if Belmont wants to recruit more industry, more commercial, we need more housing to create an environment where businesses can thrive and where there's opportunities for employees to live. We need more housing for our neighbors, for seniors to be able to stay in their homes or to downsize. It's their choice. For families to set roots, for renters to become homeowners, for municipal staff to live here if they choose, for our restaurants to have employees and customers to create that vibrancy that we all want to see here in town. MAP 2 delivers on deep affordability, homes at different price points, more foot traffic for businesses, and a cleanup of a contaminated site. MAP 2 delivers more homes more immediately and truly is a win-win-win. I urge you all to vote yes for this amendment.
Thank you, Ms. Heller. Yes.
Hello, I'm Laura Caputo, and I'm a town meeting member from Precinct 8. So this site, MAP 2 is discussing the Pure Coat site, which is about half a mile from my house and is in my district. I thought long and hard about where I came down on map 1 versus map 2, and I will say I'm really sensitive to the question about, I'm sensitive to the idea of losing some of the potential of a large commercial area there. But the reality is it has sat for 20 years, significantly underused. And I think we, as a town, having been here for 20 years, I've seen, this pattern before where with McLean, for instance, there was this idea that people sort of envision, one particular type of use that we think would be best for the town, and we hold out for that, and then the market tells you the reality, which is that, in the case of McLean, the reality was people weren't building the long-term care units that we had hoped to do there. So in the end, I feel I rise in support of map 2 because I think at the end of the day, we can't keep holding out for some ideal that we think is possible but may never happen. And instead, I think we can look at this and say we have an opportunity here to get mixed use, which continues to give us some commercial revenue, and to get housing, which we desperately need. And I think we have to look at this, like Rachel was saying, and Will Brownsberger, the lack of housing in Massachusetts is the most significant issue facing our state and our area, and I think every town has a responsibility to make some contribution. And I think this is a chance, map 2 gives us a chance to create an opportunity where housing really could happen and could happen soon and could happen in a way that will include affordable units because you have enough units to hit the threshold. And lastly, I'll just also say I'm sensitive to the equity issue about where development is being rooted in this town, and I know we've heard a lot from residents in Waverly who feel like the majority of these opportunities are in their neighborhoods, and I think as somebody who lives in Precinct 8, I'm happy to say, I want some of those opportunities in our neighborhood. And I think it could be, like previous speaker said, I think it could be a really great opportunity, and I would much rather bike past a nice new building than what's there now. Thank you.
Mr. McNamara.
Hello, Michael McNamara, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 7. I just wanted to rise in support of the map that gives us the most units. And I know this has sort of been a bit of a back and forth about map 1 versus map 2. But I just want to say, starting out, I'm from Lower Belmont, or as my grandfather would say, Brighton Ave onto abutting Cambridge. And I feel like I'm willing to have the housing being built in my area, or I'm willing to have it be built in Pearcoat. I just want housing to be built. And I know that my brothers, 2 of them have moved out of Belmont because they became young adults, they have good jobs, they work as nurses, that's a pretty, you get paid pretty well as a nurse, and they still can't afford a house in Belmont. And I've been a renter, I'm 34, turning on 35, and I can't afford to buy a house in Belmont. I can rent, but I can't afford to buy. And I think a lot of people my age and younger are leaving the town. They get a great education at our high school, they get a great education in our schools, they love the town, they're with their family, they're with their folks, and then they realize, I can't buy here. I can barely rent here. I'm going somewhere else. My brothers are all in Stoneham. So I would advocate that for whatever amendments you see, or whatever maps you see, to try to pick the one that has the most potential units, and try to have the one that has the biggest upside. Because I know there are a lot of young people in Belmont who are the core of our town and would be the next generation coming after me and you to help make sure the town stays excellent and to make sure it has its high quality services and high quality jobs and offer innovation and all the good things we want. But a lot of them are leaving Belmont. And I know a lot of seniors also are struggling with costs. And all I can say is capitalism relies on supply and demand. I know we've all heard this before. And the simple thing is, if you have a huge demand, and Belmont's a very attractive town, a lot of people want to be here. A capitalist, any capitalist will tell you, if you have a large demand and you have very little supply, prices are going to shoot through the roof. So we need to balance the supply and the demand in a way that allows Belmont to make the most units we can and keep people in Belmont deal with the affordability crisis in Belmont, because it's like bread and butter issues, and make sure to keep a lot of young people in Belmont. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Joy.
Paul Joy, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 7. Mr. Moderator, I rise today to advocate for Map 1. On February 6, 2024, during a planning board meeting, Mr. Epstein made a notable statement. Responding to a question from Associate Member Andrew Osborne, at the 1 hour, 12-minute mark, Mr. Epstein said, and I quote, "I, for one, am trying to not further displace existing businesses to be solely housing, but to try to preserve commercial locations as much as we can." If this is indeed Mr. Epstein's belief, then I must ask, why is town meeting debating 2 maps, one of which proposes significant commercial zoning elimination? His actions and his words are simply not aligned.
Mr. Joy, please remember, no criticism of individuals or committees.
Apologies.
Ms. Bass, let me handle it, please. Mr. Joy, make your points, please, without attacking individuals.
Let me also share with you the perspective of the Economic Development Committee on this matter. At our meeting on October 24, 2024, the EDC unanimously voted to support Map 1. We did so for many reasons. Here's why Map 1 is actually a better choice. It has more mixed-use development opportunities. Number 2, it has higher overall unit capacity. And number 3, we believe it has the better location. Lower Belmont, which Map 1 prioritizes, sits on the busiest bus line in Belmont. It's near critical amenities like the Star Market in Cambridge. Map 1 helps enhance Belmont's commercial base, it fosters balanced growth, and it directly addresses concerning over rising municipal costs by integrating commercial revenue potential alongside critical housing. The recent scenario analysis results from RKG finalized today highlights the potential negative financial impact of commercial zoning elimination. This should serve as a wake-up call. Belmont can simply not afford to erode its commercial tax base at a time of increased financial strain. And let me be clear, Belmont doesn't need people who try, we need people who do. To borrow a phrase from my favorite Jedi Master, try not, do or do not, there is no try. Introducing Map 2, which undermines commercial base, is not preserving anything. It paves the way for commercial zoning elimination. Actions speak louder than words, and voting for Map number 1 is the only action that aligns with the principles that Mr. Epstein claimed to support back in February. So let's not just try to protect Belmont's future, let's do what is right by choosing Map 1, a plan that fosters balanced growth, strengthens our commercial districts, and sets our towns on a path to long-term fiscal sustainability. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Ms. Wu.
Hi, Julie Wu, Town Meeting Member for Precinct 6, and also co-chair of the DEI Implementation Committee and member of the former MBTA Communities Advisory Committee. I'm here in support of Map 2. I also want to respond to Paul Joy's comment about eliminating commercial districts because, in fact, Map 2 doesn't eliminate commercial districts. It's an overlay district. There were 3 major goals that I had on the MBTA Communities Advisory Committee. One was to increase the housing stock in Belmont, to enable people of all socioeconomic groups to move into and continue living in Belmont throughout their lives. Number 2, to increase affordable housing and progress towards safe harbor from 40B developments. And number 3, to increase the commercial tax revenue, actually, to reduce the property tax burden on all Belmont residents. So Map 2 would, in all likelihood, produce more housing. It also includes, as we have noted, the Pure Coat property, which has been underutilized and for which the developer actually desires inclusion in 3A. The property is located in a business district with high turnover and vacant storefronts. And because it's one of the largest lots included in either Map 1 or Map 2, This property could significantly help the town achieve safe harbor from 40B developments. There are things going around saying that Chapter 40B is more desirable than 3A. Actually, it is not. 40B allows developers to override local zoning in communities that do not meet safe harbor, whereas in 3A, developers must comply to zoning requirements that we put into place. So MAP 2 has several potential upsides. It allows mixed-use development that supports both residential and commercial needs. It moves us towards safe harbor from 40B developments. It revitalizes underutilized space, potentially increases property values, creates a potentially more walkable and livable community. It addresses the high business district turnover and vacant storefronts and develops the district potentially to its best use by increasing foot traffic to support local businesses. And fiscal impact analyses have showed a likely positive impact. So considering all of the above, I believe that MAP 2 represents overall an opportunity to simultaneously address housing supply needs, affordable housing requirements, economic revitalization of an underutilized area, and it could potentially be a long-term economic benefit to Belmont.
Thank you. Ms. Bass.
I'm Sue Bass, town meeting member from Precinct 3, and like probably everybody here, or most people here, I'm in favor of more housing by adopting Chapter 3A. But I wanted to begin by correcting an impression that Roy left. I was, a century ago, the chairman of the referendum committee that opposed the previous original proposal for McLean development. And he said that that McLean controversy involved special permits. It did not. The McLean plan, the original one that the town meeting accepted and a referendum narrowly endorsed, involved total rezoning with no special permits. There was merely site plan review. That technical difference means special permit means the town can say no. Site plan review means the town can basically encourage, put this here rather than there and stuff like that. It's better than nothing, but it's not the ability to say no to anything. So which map do I prefer? I prefer map 1 because of that distinction. When you give up a special permit, you avoid an important level of town oversight that I don't think we should give up. As a fellow town meeting member said to me, sure, it'll avoid a 40B project because we're giving them everything they would have gotten from 40B. You've been told that the planning board is working on new commercial zoning that will include housing. It will be mixed use, and it'll be as soon as next spring, without giving up the control that we have from a special permit, and that's what I suggest we do. So I suggest you vote no on Roy's amendment for map 2, and we stick to map 1 that the town spent so much time working on. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Burley.
Erin Rowland, town meeting member from Precinct 6. I was the campaign manager for the override that passed in the spring, and during that campaign, town leaders promised Belmont voters that they were going to work really, really hard to expand and increase our commercial property tax base. So my concern about map 2 is that it really moves in the opposite direction. It takes about 5 acres of commercial land, which is, very scarce in Belmont. We don't have a lot of commercial land. That's part of our financial predicament. And it moves it into a predominantly residential use. And it's true that the current proposed development does include some commercial, but it's very small. It's not even the full first floor, because they don't have to include that if it's not along a public way. Part of the property abuts the railroad track. So they can also deduct a lot of things for the lobby, for the entrances to the car garage, and so forth. As a result, it's just very small. And so my feeling when I look at that proposal is that it really is predominantly a residential use. So I feel like we're moving away from the goal that the town leaders said repeatedly, and I also said repeatedly during the override campaign, was what Belmont was going to do. One of the things it was going to do to help kind of right the financial ship of the town. I am very, very strongly in favor of passing one of these maps. I think it is essential that we comply with the law and contribute to this critical issue, which is to, expand housing in our town and in our region. But I'm unconvinced that MAP 2 is the best way to do that. I am very excited by the planning board's work to rezone that area for mixed use that would have a more robust commercial element to it. And I guess I just also wanted to comment on one of the things that Roy said in his presentation, which is that the current proposal for Pure Coat would generate additional property tax revenue and be cash flow positive for the town. It will definitely generate additional revenue. That's not in question. The Landwise report was very strange that tried to show positive net flow for the town. It didn't use the RKG numbers. So instead of using 0.3 kids per unit, which is what RKG says is our average, it used 0.27. It didn't use their number for per pupil spending either. It used a lower number that was really unrealistic, I think, especially given how under-resourced our district is. This is a district where middle school students can't check out books because we don't have a librarian or a library aide in the building.
Ms. Burley, we're
So-
at the 3-minute.
I'm wrapping up. I'm rising in support of MAP 1, and I have a lot of questions about MAP 2. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Abercrombie.
Thank you. Angus Abercrombie, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 8. Mr. Moderator, I think the assembled members might be getting a little tired of me rising in support of as much housing as we can build in Belmont, and I'm going to keep doing it as long as I am a member of this body. But here's the thing. I am unconvinced that MAP 2 gets us there. I support as much development as we can cram into that Pure Coat site, and as much as we can cram into the south corner of Belmont. But when we leave after this town meeting session, if we have rejected the south corner development, there is no moneyed interest there that wants to come back. There is no plan to look at our zoning in that area and come back in the spring to advance the housing construction needs of that area. We have a plan. We have planning board support, and we have a very different planning board than we have in 5-10 years ago, for revisiting our general business bylaw to allow for mixed use. That would allow for a significant redevelopment at Pure Coat, and we could do it by right, potentially. That would allow for a significant redevelopment at the Mahoney property that would allow for mixed use, which the current proposal does not. So we can come back and we can build housing in both of these parcels, in both of these areas. But if we pass the proposed amendment, I find that outcome incredibly unlikely. It's also important to note that, the number of units that could potentially be built in the south corner of Belmont is a number that has been talked about as insignificant, but I think it's incredibly relevant to talk about the quality of rental stock in Belmont. And when you allow a property that hasn't been, torn down and rebuilt since perhaps even the earlier half of the 1900s to add a unit, all of a sudden you're allowing this profitability to a reconstruction. And that can increase the quality of that housing stock and the experience of the people living there. I don't know how many of us have faced down the idea of living in a rental property, at least in recent years, But there's a lot out there that's quite unpleasant to be a part of, and I want to make sure that we can promote high-quality living experiences in Belmont, even within our rental stock that often doesn't get considered here. So I want to see both of these projects go forward. I want to see both of these areas, and I think the only path to getting there is to reject this amendment and come back to it in the spring with a good plan for mixed-use development in our general business districts. And I hope to see the planning board bring up something like that, or else I'm going to look like a fool. But that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Moriarty, and then I'll go to the balcony.
Meg Moriarty, Precinct 2, also a member of the Belmont School Committee. This matter has not been discussed by the school committee, so any of the views I shared tonight are just my own. Fletcher Swift wrote this about Massachusetts. No other state pursued so long and so completely the policy of placing almost the entire burden of school support on local communities. I believe that both maps 1 and 2 offer awesome opportunities that will allow construction of thousands of new, much-needed housing units, and that we will get to welcome many new students into our awesome school district. But I believe that Map 1 has the potential to place much less of a burden on Belmont taxpayers by preserving more of the town's extremely limited commercial tax base. I'm so thankful to our taxpayers who supported the last override, and I understand that we need other local sources of revenue to support our schools. In the past, Belmont has prided itself on doing more with less when referring to per pupil expenditures, and I don't believe that we can continue to educate our students with less. So I think it's important to have accurate information when you make your decision tonight. As a school committee member, I saw projections in some of the reports that are based on uninformed staffing models, which assume that we would not need to add any administrators despite adding students to our schools. I do not believe that that is true. Staffing is not a linear thing. We do not wait for 25 students before adding an FTE. We have some grades like 7 and 8 right now where if we add just a few students, we would need to add another FTE. But this wasn't reflected in the projections. I think it's naive to think that we can bring in more students without providing adequate staff and administrators to support the needs of our students and our staff. As has been discussed at many public budget summits, without more commercial tax base, the school's budget has little room to stretch. Temporary federal funds come and go. The Student Opportunity Act has minimum aid in Belmont. There's been no progress on Chapter 70 inflation fixes to offset the last few years of rising inflation. And so far, the Fair Share Act has only come to K-12 for universal free lunches. So as Swift wrote, the bulk of increased education expenses fall on Belmont taxpayers. So tonight, whatever decision that you make, please consider how commercial development will help support our school budget and any new students who we welcome as a result of the construction of thousands of new housing units in Belmont.
Thank you. The balcony here?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Judith Finley, Precinct 6. I'd like us, if we could, to return to general business and using it to to achieve the same objectives as 3A. I wonder if Carol Barbarian could address that for us.
What specific question did you have, Ms. Finley?
I want to know whether general business can't actually be used to achieve the same objectives as 3A would. In other words, use that.
Ms. Barbarian, yes, that's a fair question. That's certainly within scope.
Carol Barbarian, Vice Chair of the Planning Board, Town Meeting Member Precinct 7. The Planning Board we did take a vote on the level of interest among the board members of looking at rewriting aspects of the general business zoning code, specifically the usage tables, that would allow additional uses. We really haven't taken it further than that particular conversation, and conversations with Chris Ryan might be more relevant, or Ara, who might want to speak about what is allowed in there currently versus what could be modified through a vote of town meeting in the future.
Ms. Finley, is that? Okay, great, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Barbarian. Mr. Barry.
Hi, I'm Dan Barry, Precinct 6. The Landwise financial modeling document says that a 4 to 5 story, primarily residential development at the Peercoat location would generate about $1.1 million in property taxes, but due to projected additional educational expenses, would only yield a net positive revenue of about $200,000 for the town, which might be on the high side. Please consider what a 4 to 5 story purely commercial development would generate at the Peercoat location. Now, all of us received an advocacy email over the weekend saying that consultants for both the town and the Peercoat property owner have concluded that purely commercial uses are not economically viable at the Peercoat site. That's a quote. I think that's an extraordinarily sweeping pronouncement, and it potentially conflicts with an October 2024 market analysis report prepared by RKG Associates, who are presumably some sort of consultants, hopefully competent ones, for the town, which describes Belmont as underserved, that's a quote, with respect to the Cambridge-Waltham area hotel submarket, and specifically states that there may be untapped potential for a hotel development in Belmont. If there was a 4 or 5 story hotel, medical office building, some other economically viable use at the Peercoat location, the net financial yield for the town would likely be much more positive than what MAP 2 would produce, because we might still get about $1.1 million or more in property taxes, and maybe meal and room taxes too, but would not incur $500,000 or $700,000 or more in school expenses. As someone who has actually lived in public housing, I think that more housing is great. But given our current structural budget deficit, basic math tells us that we need more highly profitable commercial properties to generate the money needed to cover the cost of educating the new school children we get from new housing, so that these additional students don't trigger the need for another operating override that, if it passes, will lead to seniors selling their homes to families with school-age kids, setting off a cycle of operating overrides, boosting the number of school-age children, thus requiring more overrides. Quickly on 40B, if you are very committed to creating more housing and you're confident that, as Select Board Member Epstein posited, the Peercoat property owner will pursue a hostile 40B development if we vote for MAP 1, that's all the more reason to vote for MAP 1, because then Peercoat could still, and actually Friends Construction, could still shift from commercial to primarily residential sites thanks to 40B, and you'd get the lower Belmont, Belmont Corner, South Belmont district included in MAP 1.
Excuse me 1 second, Mr. Barry. There is a point of order.
Adam Batista, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 3. We are not allowed to talk about children and the cost of children. It's illegal and it's against the law.
I would ask Mr. Hall for his view of that, please.
George Hall, Town Council. Under the current scope of the debate, I don't think the town is at risk of being sued for comments of that nature. The town meeting should not be making decisions that discriminate against families with children, but as part of a debate, I don't think that crossed a line.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Please
Thank you,
continue,
Hall.
Mr.
And,
Barry.
I'm all set, so if you want more housing, actually vote for MAP 1. If Mr. Epstein's right, you'll get Peercoat and Friends as primarily residential thanks to an adverse 40B. And you'll also pick up as more units everything that MAP 1 has in Lower Belmont, Belmont Corner, South Belmont, whatever you want to call it, which aren't, that district isn't in MAP 2.
Thank you. Mark, go ahead.
Mark Kagan, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 8. Kind of in a follow-up to what Dan Barry just spoke to, it seems part of the crux of the matter is, can we get a reasonable commercial development at the Peercoat site? And there's been conflicting information. I saw in Select Board Member Epstein's slides the bullets that said that a hotel or a medical office is not economically feasible at that location. I wanted to ask if you want to say a little bit more about that and clarify where that information came from and why you believe that's true. Is that okay?
Mr. Epstein?
Roy Epstein, member of the Select Board. We had a public meeting on September 30th where the owner of the Peercoat site attended, and I asked him specifically about those uses, and he said he's looked at them, and he said they don't work for me. They just don't. He's the owner.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Epstein. So based on that information, I would assume that to increase the commercial development in Belmont, we should pursue other locations. And since that gives us the most housing, I'm right in support of MAP 2. as I believe that the Pure Coat site would indeed generate a reason, much more housing, and what's really important, much more affordable housing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hey.
Ji-Yun Huang, Precinct 8. I would appreciate hearing from Mr. Richter and Mr. Yates as to the vote breakdown as to what the reasoning was. Thank you. I think especially the 3-2 and the near unanimous vote from you guys. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question, but.
Oh, I would
Okay,
appreciate if they can
Thank
explain
you.
their votes. Thank
Mr.
you.
Richter? Oops. Why don't you use one of those?
I'm just going to. Thank you. I'll hold it up. Paul Richter, Warrant Committee Chair. I think the biggest concern that the Warrant Committee had, I mean, we were not unanimous. There were 2 members who voted for MAP 2, so we weren't unanimous. But the majority, I think, were concerned that we were permanently taking a property which could be used for commercial use and we're putting it into residential. So we were concerned that the financial impact long-term of that property, we'd lose that by. We understand that perhaps not immediately, there's nothing imminent that could be done, but sometime in the future, we'd be ruling that out by committing to this. So other members of the Warrant Committee are free to speak up and to comment how they want to say. So.
Thank you, Paul. Taylor? Try.
Taylor Yates, Chair of the Planning Board, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 2. So I want to be careful not to speak on behalf of other member of the Planning Board, so I'll give you what I think are the contours of the conversation we had. So I want to start by saying that the Planning Board voted 5-0 in favor of adopting a map. We are 100% aligned on adopting the MBTA Communities Act and complying with the law. We had a lot of the same divisions within the Planning Board that you are hearing tonight. And if the shortest way to describe it is that if this lot were not commercial, it would not be controversial. I have a lot of the same concerns that have been expressed about the prospects of another override being able to pass when a plank of the last override campaign was expanding our commercial tax base. The real challenge with this proposal is not the net gain of commercial, it's the opportunity cost. We are not going to get to 10% commercial by adding ground level retail. We're going to get there by adding multiple stories of commercial. However, I was a big supporter of bringing both maps to town meeting because I am a believer first and foremost in democracy, even if that leads to a policy outcome that I do not prefer. So that's why we're talking about this tonight.
Ms. Barbarian, the Vice Chair of the Planning Board.
Thank you. Carol Barbarian, Vice Chair of the Planning Board, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 7. Just a quick clarification on our vote. We voted unanimously to support compliance with the 3A law. We did do 2 separate votes, one on map 1, one on map 2. So I do just want to clarify that I was one of the votes that was in favor of map 1 as opposed to map 2 for many of the reasons that Taylor stated. We also feel that this 3A zoning is a step in a much larger process to change what's allowed in Belmont. We want to look at many different areas of the town and what can be done. Mixed use is going to be a very big part of that process. And so this is not the end with what is passed here today. It's really just a step in the right direction to help keeping us towards gaining more housing diversity, more affordability, and more options for people in town. So thank you.
Thank you. It's getting near 9 for a break. Mr. Stanton, we'll do you and then we have a break, but please, honor system there and in line. Mr. Stanton.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Vincent Stanton, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 3. I'd like to sharpen the arguments advanced by Sue Bass and Angus Abercrombie, and I think Dan Barry as well. I think we've been presented with, or this has been framed as really a false choice, because you heard the chair of the select board say that if we voted for map 1, she would work enthusiastically with the owner of Pure Coat to fashion a plan that is majority housing, but includes a more significant commercial component, perhaps multi-story hotel, something like that, that the economics of which are far more favorable to the town, so that the overall mix of that parcel would, instead of being borderline positive, at least under favorable assumptions, would be more robustly positive. So, in other words, in my view, voting for map 1 is voting to include both parcels in our affordable zoning plan. It's just that we're going to get around to including the Pure Coat site at a later date, and we don't have to bundle it with the French and Mahoney site. The only reason that that's necessary is because of requirements under 3A. I think it has to be 5 acres or something like that. So there are a variety of constraints under 3A that force us to deal with it in a certain way. If we were customizing the rezoning of that property and working with the developer, I think we could fashion a win-win plan, and you've heard the unanimous support for that from the select board, based on what Chair Dion said and the votes of the other two members. And what I'm hearing from the planning board members that have spoken, similar. So I don't have much question that that would happen. Maybe there would be 150 units instead of 225 or 170. But I think that's the real win-win. The reason that you can't have both parcels in a map tonight is because of the continuity. The biggest area has to be 50%, and if we included both parcels, the Waverly would fall below 50%. So, but this is a way to really get the maximum housing, is to vote on one now, and then watch our town leaders work, negotiate with the developer, not take the developer's threat of a 40B, which of course he could have done at any time over the last, that family has owned the property for decades.
Mr. Stanton, 3 minutes.
Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Moderator. So we ought not to cave to threats of the developer. We ought to recognize that he's going to argue for what he wants, which is the unfettered zoning that comes with 3A. I think we can do better. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Let's take our custom, a 5-minute break. And if you can remember your places in line,